Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Project Management PrepCast. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner, and this lesson is recorded with a live audience on Facebook and YouTube, and we are going to take a look at the Agile Manifesto. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. For those of you who are live with me here on YouTube and on Facebook, or those of you who are watching this recorded later on as part of my PMP exam prep course. Nice to have you with us, everybody. Here is our agenda. Yes, the Agile Manifesto is going to be the topic of today. The Agile Manifesto consists of 4 values and 12 principles, and that is going to be the main focus of what we're doing. Review of these values, review of these principles, and throughout, I am going to challenge you with a few sample exam questions. And as always, I'm closing this presentation with a take action slide and also with the takeaways to summarize kind of the learning of what you should take away from our lesson today. Before we get started, before we jump into the manifesto and these values, please let me remind you that I have a complete PMP exam prep program for you. On the left, you see the PrepCast training course at pmprepcast.com. And on the right-hand side, you can see the PrepCast Simulator. Everything that you learn from this lesson here or from anything in the PrepCast training, you can apply to over 2,200 sample questions in the simulator, made to be as closely representing the actual PMP exam as we can. All right, so let's get started with the manifesto here. First few people sending their hellos. Hello back to you, Vinesh. And you're welcome. I really enjoy doing these live videos, as a matter of fact, here. So the lesson is our journey into the Agile Manifesto. And that begins back in 2001, when 17 software developers met at the Snowbird ski resort in Utah. They were discussing methods of developing software that would enable them to deliver a higher quality software products in a shorter time frame than the traditional software development methods that they were using back at the time. Really heavyweight development methods, not really tailored towards software development. The group named themselves the Agile Alliance, and they all agreed, that these new methods, they should be based on iterative and incremental development, where requirements and solutions evolve through collaboration between self-organizing and cross-functional teams. And the result of this meeting was the Manifesto for Agile Software Development, but it is now simply known as the Agile Manifesto. A couple of things that we also want to state clearly here. One aspect of the Agile Manifesto is that it stands out immediately. It is written at a very high level. Okay, this is important because all of the values and principles that make up the manifesto, they state what you need to do, but not dictate specifically how to implement these principles. And this is why Agile is really considered a philosophy, right? It is not a method, just like plan-driven waterfall. That is all a philosophy. It's not a method, right? But then on the right-hand side, it is really up to the individual project team to determine how are we actually going to implement this? How are we going to implement and produce our product? And what flavor, what specific method of Agile will we use? That's up to us, to the project manager, to the project team, to the organization to decide. Okay. And as you probably know, there are many flavors, right? There is Scrum, XP, Disciplined, Agile, you name it. And the choice here is yours as to what are we going to use? How are we actually going to implement this project? And how are we going to take all these principles and apply them? That is part of the method. Also, I did mention that it was called, that is the Manifesto for Software Development, right? It is important to note that what started out as Manifesto for software development has now become globally accepted way of working and managing projects. So you could say, if you allow me this pun here, it's gone from software to everywhere, right? Please do keep in mind that even though I will be mentioning the terms software, code, development quite frequently throughout this lesson, that's just because it was from this angle that the manifesto was originally written. So feel free to change those terms with whatever it is that you are doing. If you work in product development or marketing plans or changing business process or building a road, then your deliverables won't be software, but they will be whatever it is that you hand over to the customer, right? In the end, any industry, any project where you have dynamic requirements that sort of emerge and are being developed with every sprint and every iteration, right? Using a more agile and adaptive approach, that is going to be beneficial. The fact that we're talking a little bit more about software here, that's just historical, but don't let that deter you. Okay, so we have other people here coming in. Tony Pony is here. Hi, everyone. And Chepon Depi Nukumane. I have probably completely mispronounced your name. I apologize for that. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me. The Agile Manifesto consists of these 16 components here. On the left, the 4 values, and on the right, the 12 principles, right? In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey explains the difference between these as follows, right? Principles on the right, those are rules, laws, they are permanent, they are unchanging, they're universal in nature, whereas values on the left, they're internal, they are subjective, and they may change over time. But here's the thing. If you just read through the Agile Manifesto, it's going to take you maybe 5-7 minutes just to read through it. The hard part is applying them, internalizing them, knowing them, living them, and actually doing a project and running a project in the agile way, the way that the manifesto has developed it in the beginning. All right, let's start. And we start at the Agile Manifesto itself, agilemanifesto.org. Here it is. This is a screenshot from the front page. So let's take a look at it together here. So this is the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. It says as follows: we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. These, by the way, here in the middle, these are the 4 values that we'll be looking at in detail in just a moment. That is, while there is value in the items on the right, so these things here, there is value in these, we value the items on the left more. Right there. So we value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. We're not saying processes and tools are outdated and we don't need them. It's just individuals and interactions are more important in the sense of the Agile Manifesto. Right. So this is the front page of the Agile Manifesto. These are the 4 values. Let's jump into it, each one individually. Let's take a look at the 4 values here. So individuals and interactions over processes and tools. This first statement means that we should enable our project team members and other stakeholders, especially the end users and the customers, to work together and cooperate with the project manager, acting as a facilitator in the process. Tools and processes may or may not add specific value to a project, but a strong team, solid interactions between the team itself and all stakeholders, that is crucial to agile project success. And we project managers, we facilitate this process. And yeah, by the way, in this lesson, I am going to use the term project manager. I'm going to interpret these values and the principles from the perspective of a project manager. So if you're a true Agilist, right, you're going to say, there is no project manager in Agile. For me, there is, because this is what I'm doing, right? I am helping project managers understand the Agile Manifesto and learn about and internalize these values and these principles to help them adopt these Agile principles. So I will use the term, to me, a project manager, even in an Agile project, is still a valuable stakeholder and a valuable resource. All right, so much for Manifesto Value 1. Interactions and individuals are more important than processes and tools. Value number 2, working software over comprehensive documentation. Again, working software, replace software with whatever it is that you deliver. The statement here refers to the fact that our main focus should be on delivering a working product to our customer. The actual progress on an Agile project is tracked and reported by how much working product is, in fact, developed over a specific period of time. This is what offers value to the customer. We're not saying that documentation is not used in Agile. Quite contrary, right? Nothing could be further from the truth. There is documentation in Agile. However, the documentation created in Agile should be barely sufficient. I'm using air quotes here, barely sufficient, as opposed to just creating documentation for documentation's sake. Value number 3 of the Agile Manifesto, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. This statement translates into the fact that the customer and their specific vision should always be a primary goal on your Agile project. Collaborating means ensuring that the customer is involved at every stage of the development process, and that their feedback is not only welcome, but is encouraged. We want to know what the customer thinks at every point in time as we are delivering and developing stuff. Although contracts are often contained in Agile projects, it is more important to collaborate with the customer, understand their needs, and manage these customer relationships throughout the duration of the project. And this eliminates the need for contract negotiation. Again, we're not saying contracts are not important. Au contraire, mon capitaine, okay? Because recently, I personally had to cancel an Agile project with an external vendor. And I was pretty happy that we had a solid contract set up between the two parties, okay? And that contract told me exactly what I had to do and how I needed to cancel that project, why it had to be canceled. That's beyond the scope here of what we're talking about. I take 51% of the blame. I give 49% to my vendor. But in the end, we had to cancel that project because it was simply not working, the relationship that we had right there. And the contract helped us to end and to terminate that particular project. All right. Jeff Wu says, great, I think that's going to be part of the PrepCast 7 course. Of course it is, Jeff. That's the whole point of this. Yes, this lesson is part of PrepCast 7. All right. Manifesto Value 3, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Let us move on to value number 4, responding to change over following a plan. One of the major tenets of Agile is the fact that change is always encouraged and embraced. This is very evident in this statement here in the Agile Manifesto. Customer feedback and changes in requirements will ensure that the customer will always receive what they actually want instead of what the project team or the customers themselves originally intended, because your ideas, your understanding changes, the environment changes, and we have to be able to adapt very quickly. The strength of Agile allows for the use of change-friendly methods, which build the value of responding to change over following a plan into their very foundations. Following a plan is still used in Agile. I mean, there's a lot of planning going on. Like we have a roadmap, we have sprint planning, so there's a lot of planning going on. But it is only conceived for short increments of product delivery, not for the entire product when the project is complete. And if you've managed any Agile projects, then you know that this particular value here, responding to change over following a plan, that is something that happens constantly on Agile projects. Sometimes it actually feels like we can't make up our mind in our case, especially with our exam simulator. We're constantly flip-flopping back and forth and saying, nah, this is more important, that is more important. Let's do this first, let's do that first, right? So there is... You have to be able to actually still have a plan and not just nilly-willy, change the way you do things and what you focus on, right? So this is, while it sounds simple to do, welcoming change and responding to change, making sure that you don't change it just, as the wind blows, that there's also an art to that. All right, so these were the 4 manifesto values. And now I want to bring up a question from the PrepCast Exam Simulator here for you. Allow me to read it, and I'll give you 15, 20 seconds or so to tell me your answer. So I welcome your answer. Please do in the chat, type A, B, C, or D. Tell me which one here is correct. All right, here we go. Here's the question. A vendor has been contracted by a buyer to develop a new device. The vendor insisted that the contract thoroughly capture the device specifications. The buyer does not have clear requirements upfront and, therefore, requested that the vendor develop the device using Agile. The vendor delivers as per the contract, but the buyer is not satisfied with the outcome. Which Agile Manifesto value was most likely not appropriately applied? Is it A, business people and developers must work together? B, individuals and interactions over processes and tools? Is it C, pair programming over continuous integration? Or is it D, customer collaboration over contract negotiations? Please tell me what you think. Please type it into the chat. Is it A, B, C, or D? You have about 15 seconds here. Okay, I'm getting the first responses in. We have D, 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 we have D. Yeah, if all of you say that D is correct, who am I to say something different? Yes, indeed, D is the correct answer. Thoroughly negotiating contracts, that is typical for projects that are led using the traditional approach. In this scenario, the customer does not have detailed requirements up front and requests that the vendor develops the device using an Agile method. So collaboration over negotiations would be more beneficial for both parties. So the third value of the Agile Manifesto is indeed customer collaboration over contract negotiation, as we have just seen. And it forms the basis for the joint decision-making process, establishes a bond between the customer and the development team, and it helps ensure that the customer receives the intended benefits of the project. The question describes a situation where the vendor insists that the project specifications are thoroughly documented in the contract, even though the buyer, the customer, does not have a clear picture of the requirements up front. The vendor produces the deliverables according to the contract that is negotiated, but the product does not deliver the intended value, the intended result. In some cases, a buyer is not a product expert and relies on us as the vendor to guide them in the product design and development. So this approach is really an example of collaborating with the customer over rigidly adhering to these specifications that we have outlined in the contract that was originally negotiated. I have one more question for you one more comment for you in regards to these 4 answers, because the question asks, which Agile Manifesto value here, which Agile Manifesto value was most likely not appropriately applied? Now let's analyze A, B, C, and D here together. And what we will see is this. Answer choice A is actually a principle. That's principle 3. You'll see that coming up shortly there. Then answer choice B, that is a value, right? That is the value 1, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Answer choice C is an agile technique. This is neither a principle nor a value. Both of these techniques, they are valuable, they're important techniques, but not in this scenario. They're completely useless. And then answer D, that is once again a value. This is value 3 that we just looked at. So what I'm trying to show you here is that when you look at these type of questions, you have to also understand, which answer is actually what is being looked for here. Looked for? Yeah, I think that's how you say it, right? So the question says, which one is a value that was not really correctly applied? And then, they give you principles, they give you methods, they give you techniques, and you have to zoom in and see, well, A and C, that's definitely not an answer because it's not a value. B and D, those are values. Those could be correct. And then B and D, which one is it? All right. And that's it for our overview of the 4 Agile values, manifesto values. Now we're going into the 12 principles. What I want to do here is I want to give you a quick rundown, a high-level overview of these 12 principles. Hold on to your hats. This is going to be very quick, very high level, just a quick, these are the 12. And then we're going to go in groups of 3, look at each of these 12 values together. Okay, so once again, hold on to your hats. Here we go. 12 values coming up for you. The first one is customer satisfaction. Satisfying the customer by delivering software that provides value to the customer early and often is what this is all about. 2, we want to welcome changes. It is expected that requirements will change, and these changes are welcome. 3 is frequent delivery, getting working software delivered to the customer as soon as possible. 4, we want co-located teams. Bring the project team and the customer together, preferably co-located in the same physical area. Principle number 5, motivated individuals. You want to build your team on motivated individuals, and you want to trust them to do the work. 6 is face-to-face contact, because face-to-face communication is the most effective method for exchanging ideas. 7 talks about working software, because true customer value is realized by delivering results, and that is represented in terms of working software or working product, if you prefer. Then we want a constant pace, sustaining a constant development pace to minimize project team burnout and maximize optimal performance indefinitely. That's what we want to do here. Number 9, continuous attention. Attention to technical excellence and good design. That will allow your product team to respond more quickly and more easily to change. Number 10, simplicity. We want to maximize the amount of work that is not being done. Principle 11, self-organization. Here the team decides how the tasks will be allocated as opposed to being dictated to them, being assigned to them. And then principle number 12, the last one, regular reflection. Schedule retrospectives to constantly reflect on the work that was completed and find ways to improve the next iteration. All right, what you may notice is that the 4 values we have just looked at, they kind of permeate through this already, right? The co-location, the collaboration, delivering working software, all of that, right? So the values, they kind of go hand in hand with these 12 principles. And now let's take a look at them in groups of 3. And we start with principles 1, 2, 3. And these focus on the customer, right? We can group these together as the customer, as the underlying thread. Customer satisfaction is first, welcome changes second, frequent delivery is third. Let's look at them one by one with some interpretational comments from me. So the first principle states, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. This principle pertains specifically to customer satisfaction, which is the highest priority when implementing Agile. Satisfying the customer is accomplished by delivering software, by delivering product to the customer early on in the project, and then continuously as the project continues, and that gives value to the customer and gives us a satisfied customer. So on an Agile project, it's important to provide the customer with this working product, working software as soon as possible. Very powerful when you as a project team can actually develop a software feature in a month or 2 weeks as opposed to a year, right? It's not only important to deliver working software early, but also to deliver it often, continuously. The goal is to deliver software to the customer in smaller chunks rather than to realize at the end of the project, oh, well, the infrastructure on which we built it, that was faulty from the beginning. All right. Early and continuous delivery of software to the customer, those are key concepts and very important to customer satisfaction. However, if the delivered software does not provide value to the customer, yeah, it's pretty much a waste of time and effort. Now, you can see why these three aspects here of customer satisfaction really do make it the highest priority of Agile projects and implementation. Agile projects seem they're driven to place valuable software, valuable product into the hands of the customer, right? And if you do that through collaboration, right, you get satisfied customers. You get a smiling customer. And that's what we are aiming for. Principle number 2, welcome changes. So this principle looks at change management and the fact that change should be welcome. And that's exactly what it states. Here we go. Welcome changing requirements even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. The idea of welcoming changes is a very important aspect of the Agile philosophy. It is distinctly different from a plan-driven waterfall-like philosophy. In fact, the waterfall term scope creep reflects sort of the negative connotation that we have there in scope changes. Implementing this Agile Manifesto principle eliminates, to a certain degree, the need for a change control process or a fully staffed change control board, right? And it frees up the resources to actually work on activities that offer value to the customer. When implementing Agile, it's expected that changes will occur on your project and that these be welcomed and embraced even if they occur late in the project. The process that is implemented on an Agile project for handling changes needs to be very easy to use, very simple, and also very transparent, very visible to everyone who's interested and involved in it. And that, having such a simple process, ensures that any stakeholder who requests a change can do it quickly and that it will be visible to the project team almost immediately, so that the priorities of new features and functionality can be properly set. Quick response to changes and the resulting adaptation to these changes actually offers the customer that competitive advantage that the last part of the principle talks about here. You can seize opportunities as they are presented and bring them to market in a shorter time period than the competition. And this enables both our project team and the customer to immediately take advantage of market fluctuations and changes in technology and to use them to our advantage. The third principle here, frequent delivery. Here we are focused on the customer principle group still. And we want to get software delivered, given it into the hands of the customer. And it says, deliver working software frequently from a couple of weeks to a couple of months with a preference to the shorter timescale. And this is one common thread to Agile implementations, regardless of the specific method that you're using, Scrum, XP, or so on. These methods include iteration cycles. They may be of different lengths, but typically fairly short, 30 days or less. And frequent delivery also involves getting these working features and functionality into the hands of the customer as quickly as possible. This ensures that the project development team will receive information and feedback on the necessary changes that need to be implemented on the feature or functionality to improve it during the next implementation. These short iterations, they also help you to structure the project team's activities and tasks and reinforce the principles of customer satisfaction and welcome changes. But by utilizing all three of these initial Agile Manifesto principle here, the ones that we just looked at, the project will be properly focused on the customer and the importance that the customer plays in all of this. So applying these first three principles is going to go a long way for you and your project team to work together very closely and collaboratively with the customer in support of the first principle, that the first value that we've looked at. All right, so this is it for the first group here of our three first principles. Now, here's another sample exam questions from the PrepCast simulator for you. All right. After the last sprint review, a stakeholder requests to add a feature to the product. The Scrum Master overhears that the stakeholder is pushing their personal agenda and that the feature will only benefit their department. Although the feature is not listed as a scope exclusion, the additional work would delay the project, defeating one of its main goals, to deliver fast. What should the Scrum Master do? Is it A, approve the request since Agile welcomes changes even late in the project development? Is it B, ask the product owner to review the request and render a decision? Is it C, reject the request since the stakeholder is pushing their personal agenda? Or D, deny the request since the new feature will delay the project? Once again, I want you to tell me, is it A, B, C, or D? Please do type it into the chat. You have 15 seconds here. Okay, I am starting to once again get answers. A lot of you seem to be in agreement here with B, 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 B. Tony says C. Okay, Tony, you're the only one who said C. I have to tell you that it is, in fact, B here. Where are we? There we go. It is B. Wait. Going too fast here. Ask the product owner to review and render a decision. The product owner, in the end, is responsible for maintaining the project backlog, which represents the scope of the project as defined by the customer and relevant stakeholders. The Scrum Master will need to refer to the product owner to decide whether or not to add this new feature to the backlog and approve its development this late in the project. Right. By the way, A here, that is one of the principles that we've looked at just a moment ago, the answer A, but it is incorrect, right? Yes, welcoming change in requirements, even late in development, that is one of the Agile Manifesto principles. However, when a product owner is assigned to the product, it is the product owner's responsibility as the voice of the customer in collaboration with the project team to review changes or new features and then render decisions. This is not the job of the Scrum Master, right? In this particular case, as the Scrum Master, as the project manager, you have to defer to the person who is actually responsible for approving or declining the scope on the project here. So we need to continually evaluate and navigate this project complexity here, but complexity can emerge at any point in the project, and human behavior, that is a common source of complexity. Based on what the Scrum Master hears as presented in this scenario here, right? The stakeholder is pushing their personal agenda. Appears to be in conflict with the project goals. if the requested new features had been explicitly listed as a scope exclusion, then we could have just said, yeah, nah, we have to deny this. But it is not. Yeah, it just appears to be out of scope. Maybe it's only for the stakeholders' personal agenda and their development. It's not up to me, the Scrum Master, the project manager. It's the responsibility of the product owner to decide this, right? In collaboration with the team and other relevant stakeholders. And then we can decide whether or not it makes sense to bring this in this late in the development. Okay, so those were the first 3 principles, 1 to 3, plus a sample exam question. We're moving on to principles 4, 5, and 6, and we are now looking at a focus on the team here. We're looking at co-located teams, motivated individuals, and face-to-face contact. Let's start here with the co-located teams. The 4th principle here states that business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. In order to accomplish this on your Agile project, it'll be important to bring the project team, other stakeholders with high interest and high influence on the project, and of course, the customer together on a daily basis. The ideal situation on an Agile project is to have everyone involved in the project to be co-located in the same physical location. Even better, for optimal results on an Agile project, the project team members and all these stakeholders, or at least a customer representative, they should also be 100% dedicated to the project for its duration. And that allows for osmotic communication. It's just, you overhear things because you're all in the same room. By interacting with the stakeholders and customers on this frequent basis, the project team is able to more clearly understand the intent behind the requirements that are given to them and develop that during the specific iteration. In this way, each team member can physically walk over to another team member and just ask a question, and just, communication becomes so much easier when you're all together in the same physical location. I'm pretty sure all of us have experienced this, being together or being not together. And then another important benefit of having co-located teams is that each team member, as well as our stakeholders, customers, are concentrating and focusing on a common goal. This is extremely powerful because it's very easy to tell if a team member is inadvertently going off on a tangent or is asked to do some other activities not supporting the iteration's goal, or is completely pulled off altogether off our project and is asked to do something else. So having everybody together, having everybody 100% dedicated, that is what is going to bring Agile project success to you. That's principle 4. Principle 5, motivated individuals, right? Build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. By the way, here is one thing that may be a little bit of a critique here: build projects around motivated individuals. What I have learned is this: the people on my project, they're usually motivated. They want to do this. I don't have to build it. I'm never going to bring somebody on who I can tell from the beginning ain't a good fit and ain't motivated and doesn't want to do the work, right? So this is, generally speaking, something that's kind of like a duh, right? But in my opinion, the people you bring on, they are motivated. They want to do this, right? So building your project teams around intelligent and motivated individuals, that goes a long way towards successfully executing your Agile projects in the most productive, cost-efficient manner possible. Recruiting individuals who have a proven track record of delivering on time, being team players, and also being able and willing to explore other areas of expertise, being cross-functional. That's the main ingredients and a good recipe for successful project teams and a successful project completion in the end. So helping to motivate individuals on a project team, that is built into the Agile philosophy, right? self-organization, self-motivation. That's what we're talking about here. That's what I meant with my critique in the beginning there. We don't want to build, we want these individuals that will do it automatically, right? They're much more motivated when they understand what their input is and that their input is valued and welcome. Instead of being dictated what task they have to work on, Agile team members, they're motivated because they select the tasks that they feel that they're best, suited to work on. And then the last part of this principle, even more pronounced step away from traditional plan-driven project management, it encourages team members to manage the daily activities on the team by themselves. Depending on the type of agile development method that's being implemented, there may not even be a project manager present on the project team. That may be more of an agile coach or a mentor, maybe a scrum master who assists. In these models, the team members themselves, they are encouraged to make most of the day-to-day decisions and how things are organized, and they're being held accountable by their peers, right? That things are done the way that we, as a team, agreed upon. We are going to do this. So we are motivated individuals. We work together on this agile project. And if you need to build a team, build it around motivated individuals. Principle number 6, face-to-face contact. Here we talk about communication management, and it says that the most efficient and effective method for conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. Yeah, that's no secret, right? Face-to-face contact, communication, it is the most effective method when we are communicating with other people. That's also why we want to have them co-located. It is especially important to use this type of communication on your agile projects by going to the source of the question, information, requirements, follow-up items. You'll eliminate most of the noise that will be encountered, right? You don't have to go, up the ladder asking the question, then some manager up there will ask, and it goes down the ladder, then it comes up again to you. No. If you can work directly with each other, much faster, much quicker, much clearer as well. Face-to-face communication, you can accomplish this in many ways. Depends on your organization, right? Project team members. You can use co-location, pair software developers together to work on the same code. Pairing method works also very efficiently when the two work on their own in separate locations, right? And now you're going to ask the question, well, this is all well and good, right? But at least a quarter of the project teams that I work with, they cannot be co-located, right? They are all over the world. They're in different countries, different continents. Yeah, what do you want me to do now, right? How do I achieve this principle of face-to-face contact? What can we do? Well, the answer is simple. Use the tools that we have at our disposal, right? Now, especially virtual teams are quite normal. You just have to do the best you can to get as close to face-to-face communication as you possibly can. Your virtual team can simply use daily video conferencing, right? Or an open channel that is constantly live that you can join. And by the way, this is what we did, the PrepCast project team. This is what we did. We use virtual tools to develop this course here, and we use Slack, we use video conferencing tools, and we just do whatever we need to do in order to communicate face to face, even though we are in different countries for some of us. Yeah. All right, that's it. Principle 4, 5, and 6. We're moving on to a sample exam question from the PrepCast simulator. Here we go. An agile project has been successfully completed. The customer is very happy with the project deliverables. Which of the following most likely contributed to the project's success and customer satisfaction? Is it A, the team members worked in pairs during the development of the product? B, refactoring and continuous integration were done as per agile best practices? C, the entire team was involved in the daily stand-ups and owned the code collectively? Or was it D, representatives of the customer were always available to answer the team's questions? A, B, C, or D? I'll once again give you about 15 seconds or so. Okay, getting the first answers. I have an A here. I have a C here. I have a B, I have a D, A, B, C, D. So we've got all four of them. All right. So yeah, I agree. This is a difficult question. This is a difficult question to answer. In our point of view, the correct answer to this one is, in fact, D. Representatives of the customer were always available to answer the team's question, because frequent feedback from the customer helps the team build what the customer requested, and therefore, of the choices provided, having the customer representative available to answer our questions, most likely the reason for the project's success and customer satisfaction. Yeah, it is reasonable assumption that the project will be successful when the customer is satisfied, and the customer is typically satisfied when they get what they envisioned and when they get what they paid for. And to ensure that the team is building the product as envisioned by the customer, customer collaboration is essential, right? Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. That's what one of the principles tells us. And when the customer or their representatives is available for the team to answer the team members' question, the team is building what the customer wanted them to build. As a result, the customer gets a product that they envisioned, the customer is satisfied, and the project is a success. So in this particular scenario here, your job is to find the best answer, right? You can argue for each one of these. We have argued for answer D. If you want the detailed explanation for each of these three and why they are wrong, A, B, C, and D, go into the PrepCast simulator, because we do give you specific per answer choices and tell you why things are correct and why things are wrong. All right, Tony asks, why not C? Well, Tony, let me tell you, C is incorrect because conducting the daily stand-up meeting and owning the code collectively, yes, that is part of the Agile best practices. Yes, I totally agree with that. Exercising these practices is different from building the right product as the customers envisioned it, right? You can meet all day long with your team and still build the wrong product, leading to an unsatisfied customer. Right? So just meeting every day and doing these agile practices doesn't help you in building the correct product that the customer envisioned. And that's why C is one of the incorrect answers here. We're moving on. Principles 7 to 9 are next. This is also where my idea broke down, kind of, oh, look, principles 1 to 3, that is all about the customer. Principles 5 to 6, all about the team. Principles 7 to 9, no more overarching thing. So I just simply said, what am I going to call this? 3 themes. So Principle 7's theme is working software. Principle 8's theme is a constant pace. And Principle 9's theme is continuous attention. Let's look at them in detail. So the 7th principle offers guidelines indicating that true customer value is realized by delivering results. Working software, working product is the primary measure of progress. And by implementing this principle, we immediately see that working software, working product, it's an integral part of our overall project's focus. We have one priority: customer satisfaction. Working product also implies some type of measurement is involved to determine, is it actually working, right? Is this done? There are a couple of basic measurements that must be present to determine if the software is working, if the product is done. The definition of done is one. It's a consensus agreement by the project team when a software feature is actually done. And second, the working software is only valuable if it offers value to the customer. If it's valuable to me, that doesn't matter. If the customer says, yeah, it's of no value, then yeah, we have no value. Therefore, this must also be included when measuring software. Yeah, it has to be developed, whether it can be considered working software. Does your customer say, yeah, this is valuable, this is working, this is done? And even though Agile involves iterations and specific working software, at the end of each iteration, we must ensure the overall focus of the entire project is never forgotten. Each piece of working software has to stand on its own, but must also be constantly measured to ensure that it continues to support the overall goal of our project. So principle 7, working software, working product. Then principle 8, constant pace. It supports the recommended guideline from the manifesto. It reads as follows: Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. This is truly important because maintaining a constant pace helps you set a limit on the amount of work that should be performed, not only for each project iteration, but for the project as a whole. It promotes better work-life balance for all team members, because by not having to work weekends and long hours for the entire duration of the project, the first few project iterations will dictate what will be expected in terms of hours per week for each team member. You want to make sure that you can continue to work at this pace. Maintaining such sustainable development pace also helps to make the overall team much happier and productive, more productive. When someone is happy while performing their work, their interest level, concentration, job satisfaction, it's all positively affected. And in addition to all of these benefits that flow directly from the team as a result of maintaining consistent, sustainable pace, there's also the benefit that is passed on to the organization. By maintaining a constant pace, right, you will always have a fresh team, right? You will always have a team that is willing to do the work. You have a team that can be counted on to deliver value, to deliver new product, to deliver new software, right? They're happy to do it. And you can tell at the end, we're continuously delivering value. So you want to make sure that you have a constant pace in order to deliver constant value by team members who are happy to do so and who are enjoying their work. Principle 9, continuous attention. Okay, and this one reads as follows: continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances quality. If the project team pays close attention to both technical excellence and good design, the resulting increased agility, specifically the ability to update and maintain the design, will come much more quickly and easily. And by the way, just going back to, remember, I had to cancel an Agile project. That was actually our main reason, right? The technical excellence, it just wasn't there from our perspective, right? And we found that we have to, go our separate ways and take over the technical excellence in-house and do this ourselves, right? So while the driving force behind Agile development is the delivery of value, the processes and procedures that are used to design the features, they must be constantly reviewed and improved, because if you're building something bad at the beginning, you're going to have technical debt. You're going to have to continuously fix this, right? And by having the technical excellence, that will allow you to keep the constant pace and deliver value. So because of the nature of software development, millions of lines of code, it's easy for the project team to become inefficient, right? Especially when it comes to updating existing code. And this is why it's important to build enough time in each iteration to allow the team to refactor the code. And refactoring refers to making the code itself more agile by cleaning it up, simplifying it, ensuring that it will remain stable. And then another important aspect of implementing this principle is that a balance must be maintained between delivering high priority features and improving the technical excellence, right? And the technical excellence, the design process. It's imperative that you set aside time during each iteration to continuous improvement of all processes by the project team so that you can support all of this in future iterations. If you build technically excellent product code now, it's easier to maintain in the future. Oops. All right. And we're going to go to another sample exam question now, but this one's different. Okay, so don't type in the answer. before I tell you what the question is. All right. All right. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So hold off with typing the answer. You have been assigned to lead an Agile project. However, when you meet with your team for the first time, you realize that due to various company-imposed constraints, most of the team members would not be able to be 100% dedicated to the project. What is your best course of action? Is it A, switch the development approach from Agile to Scrum? Is it B, increase iteration length from 2 to 4 weeks? C, offer rewards to the team members to work overtime? Or is it D, adjust assignments based on individual capacity? Right, I told you this was going to be different, so I'm not going to ask you which is the correct answer this time. I'm going to ask you this. Which of these goes against one of the principles from the Agile Manifesto that we just learned about? Right. Does A, B, C, or D go against one of the principles that we just learned about? What do you think? A, B, C, or D? Which one goes against it? All right, I'm not getting any answers here. People do not seem to want to go out on a limb. In that case, let me tell you, okay, it is in fact answer C that goes against one of these principles. Oh, here we go. It just takes a while for these to come in from Facebook. And yeah, we've got this one here. We got one B. We got another C. We have another C. Yes, you are all correct. Answer C does indeed go against one of the principles, because principle 8 of the manifesto states agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. Right, working overtime sometimes happens. Here you have to roll up your sleeves, if you have any, roll up your sleeves occasionally and work overtime. That's normal, that just happens. But here in this scenario, it kind of implies, oh, we're going to do this all the time, right? We're going to pay you incentives so you work overtime, work harder for way too long, right? So this goes against that principle. So now we know C is incorrect. My question for you then is this. If C is incorrect, which one is correct? Is A, B, or D incorrect? Once again, I'm going to give you 15 seconds here. May have to wait a little longer since it takes a little longer for Facebook and YouTube show up here in my feed. All right. A, B, C, or D? All right, we got a few. One coming in. D. Pearly Brown says D is correct. And guess what, Pearly? You are right. D is indeed correct. There you go. Answer D, adjust assignments based on individual capacity. When it is not possible to have 100% dedicated team members due to various company-imposed constraints, as is described here in this scenario, the only choice is to adjust the project task based on the capacity of the individual team members. One note here before we move on to principles 10 to 12. In Agile, tasks are not assigned by the Scrum Master or by the project manager. You don't assign it to team member. Instead, team members take the tasks themselves. But the way that it's phrased here, let's review it again. Adjust assignments based on individual capacity, right? It doesn't go into detail as to how the tasks are actually assigned. It's just a general idea of what should be done when the team members are not 100% dedicated to the project. You know, if you want to really, really be specific, you could say, allow the team members to only, accept assignments based on their individual capacity, something along those lines, right? But from these 4 answer choices, D is definitely the best one in this particular scenario. All right. And we're moving on to the last batch of 3. Again, I couldn't find a really good overarching thing, so I called them 3 guidelines. So principle 10, the guideline is simplicity. Principle 11, the guideline is self-organization. And principle 12, the guideline that the manifesto gives us, is regular reflection. Let's do this. Principle 10, simplicity. Here is what it says. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. If you allow me to take this principle to the absolute extreme, right? The amount of work not done, right? Then we could say that the most reliable features that you can build in your project are the ones that you never ever build, right? They require no overhead. If it's not been built, they require no maintenance, no upgrades, and they never have to be any development hours dedicated to them. So always be aware of what you not build into your project, yeah, in order to practice excellent agility. Okay, as I said, that's just taking it to the absolute extreme here. I hope you don't mind that little sort of sidestepping here. The key to implementing this principle on your project is to ensure that all activities, except for the continuous activities that we discussed in Principle 9, are focused on creating continuous attention, excuse me, not continuous activities, the continuous attention activities, right? They have to happen. They're focused on creating features that provide value to the customer and will be used by the customer. This should not be considered as optional, but rather as critical to the success of an agile project. If it doesn't offer value, why build it? Okay? So perhaps the most important benefit of implementing this principle is the fact that keeping it simple reduces the risk on your project. And once again, you know, this helps us with this continuous attention to technical excellence. If you don't build a feature that is technically way too complex, but delivers very little value or no value, then you don't have to maintain that complexity, right? Complex projects that contain anything more than the basic essential components are more prone to risk, such as longer risk exposure, increased failure points, creep in terms of scope, schedule, budget, right? By only concentrating on the basic essential components, you create an initial feature set and you'll be eliminating considerable amount of risk on the project. Principle 11, self-organization. Here is what it says. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. This means that the team decides how the tasks will be allocated, as we just talked about in the previous sample question, as opposed to being dictated to them. There are many benefits for having a self-organizing team on your project. First of all, architectures, designs, and requirements, they're implemented by those who are actually creating them, instead of being dictated from individuals like me who are not involved or technically all that up to speed on the project on a daily basis. Yeah, like an external architect, maybe even. After all, who knows best what architecture to use in terms of their own specific project better than the core project team, right? The people who are at the center of the project know the project best, so let them decide what the correct architecture is going to be. Self-organizing teams, they also experience a higher level of ownership and pride when they are developing a specific product. And let's not forget that self-organizing team does not succeed or fail as individuals, right? The team as a whole is responsible for the success or failures of the project, which is another driving force to ensure that a defect-free product is always delivered to the customer. And then third and lastly here, the benefit of using a self-organizing team is that the project team is closest to the project's technical details. Through the process of continuous improvement, the project team members always have in front of their minds how to constantly make the product and process better for future iterations. We're moving on to the final principle, regular reflection. You've probably heard of this. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. This is a principle that has been adopted by every single method of Agile development. It is crucial to Agile project success. Regular reflection refers to the fact that every iteration of Agile software development contains time that is put aside to reflect, to think about the work that was completed, and to find ways to improve for the next iteration. Gathering these lessons learned is not a concept that was invented by Agile. The difference with Agile is, however, that these are reviewed regularly at the end of each iteration, right? And if you have 2-3 week-long iterations, iteration, reflection, iteration, reflection. And at each iteration, you improve, you make tweaks, you make things better for the next iteration. And in this way, you gather valuable feedback. This enables changes and improvements to be placed into effect almost immediately. In Agile, the most common tool that we use is, of course, the retrospective meeting. This is, again, common to all Agile development methods, normally conducted at the end of the iteration. And the purpose is to have the team reflect on what things worked in the current iteration, what things did not work in the current iteration, and to create a solution to the problems that were encountered in order to improve future iterations. And then one more thing, and another important aspect of regular reflection using a retrospective is that the plan for the suggested changes for improvement is created during the retrospective. So this is not something when we say, yeah, we're seeing a problem here with how we do X. Let's just continue doing that. We'll fix it sometime down the road. No. We see a problem with what we're doing here with X. How do we not do it wrong the next time? Let's immediately try this idea and apply this during the next iteration. So immediate action, immediate implementation of the changes that we have found. That's it for our review of those 12 principles, but we still have one more sample exam question to go here. And again, this is going to be different. I'm going to be asking you a couple of different questions about this. So hold off with answering A, B, C, or D until you know what I'm actually asking. The question is this: a new program consists of 5 projects, each performed by a Scrum team. Throughout the program lifecycle, various deliverables from each of the Scrum team will serve as inputs to other teams. Question: what is the best strategy for each of the Scrum Masters to navigate this complexity? Is it A, seek program managers' approval of the deliverables before they move from one team to another? Is it B, apply systems thinking throughout the project lifecycle? Is it C, request that the product owner prioritizes the least complex user stories in the program backlog? Or D, enhance simplicity by minimizing the amount of work not done? So here we have our scenario, the question, the 4 answers. What I would like to know from you, again, is not the correct answer. Instead, I would like to know the following. Which of these 4 answers relates to one of the 3 principles that we have just seen? Does A, B, C, or D relate to one of these principles that we have just looked at? Let me know. You have 15 seconds here to type it in. Okay, I'm getting the first answers. They are D and D and D and D. We do have Tony who said C. We have Ashmir with another D. So mostly we're getting Ds here, right? You are absolutely correct. D does indeed relate to one of the principles that we have just looked at. Notice that it's red. Red means it is incorrect. Okay? I want you to tell me why it is incorrect. So your next thing that you have to tell me is, why is D incorrect? What is wrong with this particular statement here? Why is it incorrect? In 1 or 2 or 3 words, explain to me why D is incorrect based on the principles that we have just learned. Okay, I'm not seeing anything coming in at the moment, right? The answer is just one word in this particular statement. Take a closer look at what it says. Enhance simplicity by minimizing the amount of work not done. Let me highlight the word that is the problem here, right? The word that is the problem is this here, right? Minimizing. Okay. One of the principles behind the Agile Manifesto states simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. Right? There we go. Barbara got it. Maximize instead of minimize. It took a while until your answer got to me. Congratulations, Barbara. You got this correct, right? So yes, it is maximizing the amount of work. That's why D is incorrect. So if D is incorrect, the obvious question now is this: is A, B, or C correct? What is the best strategy for each of the Scrum Masters to navigate this complexity? Seek the program manager's approval, apply systems thinking, or request that the product owner prioritizes? A, B, C, or D? What do you think? All right. Rosemary says C. Edward says C. Patrick says C. Agege says B, and you are in fact correct. It is B that is correct in this particular scenario here. Yes, B is correct because systems thinking, it means taking a holistic view of how a project or program elements interact with each other. In this case, each project is interconnected with the other projects within the program. And the Scrum Masters, they will need to apply systems thinking to understand how their project and their deliverables impact the other projects in the program. All right. And that's it for our 12 principles. We're coming very close to the end. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you also for participating in our questions here. I apologize. We're going about 15 minutes over here. We should be done in 2 to 3 minutes, and then I'll let you continue with your day. Let me summarize what we have learned today. While the 12 Agile principles and these 4 values for Agile provide useful guidance for those hoping to practice Agile on their projects, they are not prescriptive, right? The Agile Manifesto does not outline any specific processes, procedures, or best practices for Agile. This is not a method. It is not a framework. It is simply a list of 4 values, 12 principles that you need to internalize. It's a mindset. You need to follow them. And you can use pretty much, to a certain extent, your own interpretation of what these mean in your situation, on your project, in your organization. Okay? Now, you may remember the Agile Manifesto was written in 2001. So a fair question is it still relevant, right? Yeah, despite the changes that the industry has seen, despite the passage of time since 2001, but especially because it has been applied to sectors and organizations far and beyond its original scope, the manifesto's flexibility, the adaptive nature means it continues to be relevant today. That's why we're looking at it right now, almost 21 years later. It's been very successful as a foundation for the Agile movement because, like I said during the introduction, in the end, the point is this: any industry and any project where you have dynamic requirements that change or evolve with every sprint or iteration, using a more agile approach could be beneficial to you. Before I wrap this up, let me remind you, we do have a full and complete PMP exam prep training course. The PrepCast training is on the left at pmprepcast.com. And we also have a fully functional and with 2,200 superb questions, fully complete exam simulator, the PrepCast simulator at pmexamsimulator.com. Take action. I really only have one take action for you today. Please do go to the agilemanifesto.org and do another round. Read the 4 values, read the 4 principles. Maybe you may want to not just read them, but study them. Think about how they apply to you. Think about, what I said about them, what you agree with, what you disagree with. This is open to interpretation to a certain degree, right? But do review them again on your own. Okay, in closing, the takeaways. Agile is a mindset. Agile is not something that can be prescribed. It can be described, and then you have to live it. The Agile Manifesto for software development, in order to be precise, but we know it as the Agile Manifesto. It laid the groundwork 21 years ago. It put it down there, and everything was built on top of that. All the Agile methods that we have today, those are the frameworks that were built on the Manifesto as their foundation. Yeah, and that's it for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Thank you for being here with me today after an hour and 17 minutes. I'm allowed to slip up at this point. Thank you for being with me here today. There we go. Until next time, it's been a pleasure. But before I go, please don't forget, this lesson is part of a series in which I help you to be better prepared for your PMP exam. Please do visit pm-prepcast.com/more to watch all of them.